Scouts Victoria respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Victoria where our activities take place today. We pay our respects to elders both past, present and emerging, and continue to recognise and embrace the important continuous history and connection to land and community of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people.
So to introduce myself, my name is Lisa Picking. I am the ACC Youth and I look after the Program Enrichment Team or the PET. I certainly like calling them the PET. I'm not sure that they're huge fans of it, but I love an acronym. And that includes Environment, International, Heritage, Performing Arts, including Game Show, and STEM. So for those of you who may be familiar with a little bit of the SIA stuff, we well and truly cover SIAs, but we do way more than SIAs as well. So we're supporting this bit of the rollout, but there's a lot more to those portfolios than just the SIA parts. First and foremost, you will know, some of you will know some of the information tonight, some of you will know nothing. That's totally fine. That is exactly what this webinar is for. We're going to fill in the blanks. We're hopefully going to point you in the right direction, even if we don't have all the answers. We're going to give you enough, hopefully, confidence to take the program back to your youth members who, on the whole, are generally quite excited about it. So the other thing, the other elephant in the room with SIAs is terrain. Now, I'm going to stick my hand up and say I am not a terrain expert. We won't really be covering terrain tonight because this is just about you guys getting your heads around the SIA concept. It's a bit of a change in mindset. We're going to take it nice and slow. We're not looking for perfection, but this is about nutting that kind of stuff out. Having said that, there are a couple of SIA specific terrain resources in that resource link that I've just sent around. I'll pop it back in the chat again for those people who may have just joined us. Ooh. Make sure I get it right. There we go. So there's a little YouTube video about terrain and there's some frequently asked questions as well. So hopefully that's all helpful for you. The other thing, no, that's it. I've ticked off my list. We're good. All right. So once I get the presentation up, I won't actually be able to see your questions and things. So either you can hold on to them until we stop and have a bit of a breather, or you can pop them in the chat and maybe some of our the people in the room might be able to answer them for you. But I will stop at the end of sort of the bulk of the presentation and we can have a bit of a FAQ then. All right, I'm going to bring up the Prezzo. Hopefully PowerPoint doesn't crash on me again. That would be ideal. So let's see if we can get that happening. Oh, technology. Don't we love it? All right. Now, Lawrence, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation, please? Brilliant. That's a good start. Excellent. So we've done the acknowledgement. Hopefully you're in the right webinar. I think we're all in the right place. I don't think there's any other webinars happening tonight. You're the lucky people that get to hang out with me. And SIAs are an element of the achievement pathways. But before I rabbit on too much, let's hear it from the youth members themselves in a bit of a summary video. And Lawrence, if you can hear the sound, please give me another thumbs up. That'd be great.
A special interest area is a project or activity that we can do as an individual, a patrol, or as a unit, based on goals we have set. It's about trying new things that excite and challenge us. There are 6 broad skill areas that we may choose to explore. These include
adventure and sport,
environment,
arts and literature,
growth and development,
creating a better world,
STEM and innovation.
Your chosen project will ideally be something that is personal and meaningful to you, but it will also need to challenge you at the appropriate level. If it's too easy, it's not going to be a challenge.
I came up with my project idea because the parents of one of our cubs put up just a post in our group Facebook My daughter has a couple of disabilities, and that means that we're only just teaching her to ride a bike now that she's about 13. The Cubs were having a bike day, and he thought it would be really great if we could devise some kind of trailer or something that could be used by her. So I thought, I have a few ideas. I've seen a couple of things that work. I may have kind of an idea of how to do it. And there was another couple of people in the crew who went, if you gave me a little while to think about it, I might be able to come up with something. So we decided, let's get together, work out a vague plan and see where we can go and if we can get anything out of it. Because we basically thought the best idea of trying to get something together was to get old bikes and bike parts and that kind of thing. So we went to a couple of community forums and just said, hey, if there's anyone who has any bikes or bike parts that they'd be able to donate, kind of put the story out there, and we got a bunch of donations in. It was really great just being able to get a girl who wouldn't have been able to participate and wouldn't have been able to be part of that, and give her the opportunity to go out and be part of the bike day, like with her pack. Yeah, one of my favorite moments was when her and her dad came over to test out the trailer after we made it up. He took her for a spin down the hill, and they were probably 100 meters away, but you could hear her laughing like all the way from up the hill, and it was just really great to be able to give her that opportunity that she otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to have.
Once we have come up with an idea of what the project goal is, think about some important questions.
When I'm setting a goal, I research using books, online, and asking people who would know about that particular subject. My special interest area that I'm most proud of was when I was in Cub Scouts. I did an animation on the history of scouting. It turned out just the way I wanted it to.
Once you have set goals, your unit council will need to check them to make sure that the goals are appropriate and there is support for you.
When I'm setting a goal, I get post-it notes and write down each step to achieving said goal, then lay them out in a linear map fashion to allow myself to understand what I need to do first. I get other people to help me achieve my goals when it will be too risky or I do not have the required skills to be able to achieve said goal. A project I'm planning to do is repairing a lighting console, which is a STEM and innovation project for special interest areas. My expected outcome is to learn a few things. First up, to improve my technical skills and to improve my understanding of the DMX protocol. I think this project very much covers the intellectual spices area. One of the things I think I'll enjoy about this project is satisfying my natural curiosity for technological items.
It's also great to know that there is always help and support around to help us achieve our special interest areas. You can speak to a mentor, a subject matter expert, or your patrol or unit. Your mentor should be someone you know, who is familiar in the special interest area that your project focuses on. Maybe they are a more knowledgeable scout. Maybe we will inspire other scouts to chase their own adventures doing projects like ours. Even better, you could be their mentor. If the project meets some of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, or is in the category of creating a better world, don't forget to submit it as a Messenger of Peace project on the WOSM website too.
This project is meaningful to me because I can help out with charities such as Cancer Council, and I'm also joining the sections of Scouting Together, which will create more friendships and relationships. And I'm also learning some useful skills. I'm hoping the outcome for this fundraiser will be raising funds for the Cancer Council, and I share my leadership and everyone has a great time in this fundraiser. I know that I have finished this project when I see that everyone's had a good time and everyone's happy, and when the Cancer Council has received their funds. I did have a few mentors, such as my scout leaders, who I could talk to them about my ideas and just make it a really great day. Well, I haven't entered it on the Messages of Peace website yet, but I think I will.
No, but I really should go and submit this project to the Messages of Peace website.
So start thinking today about how you could inspire and challenge yourself with a special interest area project.
So, first thing, we are putting that YouTube clip up on our resources page. It's on my to-do list and I haven't got around to it yet, but it will be there. So if you think that would be helpful for talking to your scouts, then that might be a good way to introduce it. We hopefully have all seen this picture before. This is where SIAs or special interest areas sit in the achievement pathways. This is obviously something we've seen for a little while now, hopefully fairly familiar with. The other one is obviously plan to review. Hopefully this is something we're all pretty comfortable with. We should be doing, reasonably well by now. But if you're not, again, it's totally fine. This is absolutely a bit of a learning process. It's definitely a shift in thinking. So just remind yourselves and remind your units just that we need to keep this in the back of our minds to keep our program ticking along. But yeah, none of this is really new information. It's just presented in a different way. So we just have to get our heads around a different way of thinking. So getting into it, why SIAs? So there's obviously the things on the screen there. It gives us a lot of flexibility for right now and into the, who knows, 2, 5, 10 years time, with things that we can't even imagine are going to be invented just yet. This gives us the flexibility to keep up with it without changing the program all the time. And I think we can all be thankful that hopefully won't happen with the assistance of the SIAs. It also gives our young people ownership of their own development and their own program. There's things that they may be really, really interested in that the old program just didn't cover or didn't allow for. We make reference in the yellow and green books of old, talking about CD-ROMs and mantles and things. Well, that's okay. They can potentially still be addressed under an SIA. But things like podcast and sustainable development goals are much more where we're aiming to cover that in the flexibility and, giving our young people a program that responds to their interests, whatever that may be. And also the SIAs help our young people build those critical skills in goal setting and planning and management of projects and tasks. And really, as it comes back to that development idea, this is the self-driven part. This is the bit that they get to go, well, that's what I'm interested in. I'm going to pursue that. So it's quite an exciting area because it is that choose your own adventure. So this is what the special interest areas are. There's 6 broad categories, and I think you can probably all agree from having a bit of a look on the screen there that they are quite broad. Adventure and sport, arts and literature, creating a better world, environment, growth and development, and STEM and innovation. So really broad categories, lots of opportunities for our youth members to explore all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And we will break them down a little bit further down the presentation as well. This is just a summary of the peak award requirements. Keeping in mind, this is what we'll be asking our young people to do if they're wanting to do those peak awards for the sections. So, whether that's a Queen Scout or a Baden Powell Award or a Joey Challenge Award, those things. The hours here, it's really important to note, is what we're looking for is the effort involved. The hours are really just a bit of a guide. And that will help us also determine the right challenge level for some of the projects and goals that get pitched our way, I suppose. So a bit of a sliding scale, as you can see there, depending on the section. And then obviously the hours or the sort of effort we're looking for also increases depending on the section. So in their most basic form, this is what SIAs are. So appreciating there's a lot more hard work and a lot more analysis and all sorts of things that will go into this, but this is what we're looking at. So we're asking our scouts to come up with a goal that will make up their projects. They will plan that project, they will do that project, and then they will review that project. So in the plan stage, we're going to engage our creative thinking. We're going to pick what special interest area our project fits in best. We're going to get a bit of an outline of our project, a bit of an understanding of what we want to try and achieve, present it to our unit council or leadership groups if in the younger section. And then that will be, the plan will be approved before you start your project. So that's a key thing here. So unit councils are the key here. It's about having a conversation with the scouts around them and determining that the goal they have pitched is the right level, so that people, and then also so that people understand what they're trying to achieve. I've just popped the little brain mapping or the idea mapping image there, because that's how I kind of like to think when I'm pulling apart a project or something that I'd like to do. Have a look at all the different little stems and what maybe is linked. So that's just to give you a bit of something else to consider. Then we move on to the do part, acknowledging that there's lots of creativity in these photos, bit of the arty focus coming out here. I have to say, I think my favorite image is the little sock puppet and the Joey in the bottom left there. Makes me smile. But pretty much this is where the project comes to life in the do part. And then we move through to review, which is super important part of the SIA projects. So this is a record of the project. So whether that's a written report, or it might be a video, or it might be anything. It depends on the project, really, what the best medium is to provide that report. Reflect on how we're asking the scouts to reflect on how they've grown, what they've learned through doing the project, and a bit of a guide to help them there is those spices. What kind of things have they developed? What kind of things in spices have they developed, or have they noticed that something's shifted a little bit for them? The other thing to note here is that it's really about the journey, not the destination. So in the past, we may have focused on, getting lots of badges and getting involved in everything. This is very much about the reward is the goal, achieving the goal itself, or getting your teeth stuck into the project itself. The badge is recognition of that effort and recognition of, you've got this great thing. You can't necessarily wear an app on your shirt, but you can wear the badge which represents the app that you may have created. So that's really important to note. And if the goal isn't achieved, it doesn't mean that those achievements can't be recognised. So that's where this review process and that self-reflection comes in really important, to see how the young person has developed or grown or learnt or changed in some way as a result of what they've found through their project, whether it's a success or not. So that review process is really critical in the SIAs. A couple of other things to remember is that SIS can be done individually or as a patrol initially. Certainly in the younger sessions, it may be easier to get those patrol groups working, or if you've got a small Joey unit, it might be something to do it as a unit rather than a patrol. But certainly those small groups, particularly initially, while people are still getting their heads around exactly what SIAs are and what they look like and feel like and taste like, all those kind of things. The key thing is, if you are doing it as a patrol activity, that each scout needs to still have their own goals and action plan, even if that's pretty similar to the rest of the patrol. And the example I use here is, say that the patrol is going to build a billy cart. You might have someone in the patrol who's never built one before. And so the actual goal of putting one together is pretty realistic. But then you might have someone up the other end, maybe the patrol leader, who has built 4, 5, 10 of them before. So their challenge might be something a little bit different, like how do we make it more aerodynamic, or how do we make it safer, or something like that. So the same project, but the goals are very different. The idea with the patrols, is that eventually we're hoping that scouts become a little bit more confident with the concept, a little bit more experience, and might want to try out their own individual projects once they've had a couple of cracks with the support of their patrol or their unit. So that's something just to note there. Really important that the standard we're looking for is the individual's best. So obviously in the example with the billy cart, we're going to have someone who putting a billy cart together might be quite a challenge, having never done it before. And then we're going to have someone who's quite competent, as I said, could have done it up to 10 times, maybe even more, who's going to feel pretty good about it. So we need to be assessing on the individual's best. So that's a really key part of the SIAs. Absolutely, we're asking other scouts and leaders, whoever that may be, whether that's a unit leader or an adult leader, to help design the goals. We certainly don't want people to get discouraged if they're pitching too high, or maybe don't quite have a thorough understanding of what their goal entails. So that might be where some of that shaping and guiding comes in from other people. And that goes to the next point, that seeking advice and support from people with greater knowledge is absolutely key in these areas. So again, that can be other scouts, other leaders, and subject matter experts, which we'll come to a little bit later on. So the roles here, I know there's a lot of words on here. I'm not expecting you to remember all of these. I am going to call out a few just to sort of get your heads around what the sort of key parts of each role are. So obviously the individual scout needs to be prepared to push themselves a little bit beyond their comfort zone maybe. They need to understand what skills they may need to develop in order to achieve these goals. You know, what kind of knowledge may they need to acquire? And further to that point, they may need to identify that subject matter expert to help them. And who might that be? Have they got an inkling as to who might help them? If not, that's something that certainly the unit council, unit leaders, adult leaders can help them with. They might be able to expand their network a little bit. And we'll talk, as I said, we'll talk about those subject matter experts a little bit further down the line. Patrols and patrol leaders, asking good questions that help the scouts set their goals and review their project. That's a really key part here. So we're looking for patrol leaders to get a bit of an understanding of why that scout might be interested in pursuing this particular project, get a bit of an understanding of what they're trying to learn or what they want to achieve, and just ask questions about that, because that will help them either set up the project really nicely or help them review the project at the end of it. We're looking for units to generally be a support network for their members. I think most of our units are pretty good at doing that, but if they can keep up the good vibes, that would be, that's always helpful for people, you know, setting challenges and working through those. Again, more words on this slide, but slightly different. So we're talking about the unit councils. We're encouraging them to review and, well, they need to review and approve at the commencement and conclusion of the projects. So there's no, you know, district approval or state approval here. It's purely within the unit councils themselves. And we need to ensure that the appropriate challenge level is there for the individual. So as I said, around that effort, we don't necessarily want people, you know, blowing it out completely and getting really disheartened because they've set themselves this behemoth of a goal that was probably not an appropriate challenge for them. Equally, we don't want them coasting through and just, you know, ticking boxes. The idea is that they learn something and get something out of it that maybe they wouldn't have had an opportunity to otherwise. So that's a really key part there. Unit leaders, we need to, if they can be ensuring that the unit council meets often enough, that's going to be a really key thing. There's a couple of reasons for that. So that people can pitch their ideas and it doesn't create a backlog, but also so that they get good practice at asking good questions and making sure that the SIA process and generally the program in general is ticking along nicely. And also that if there are people pitching ideas, that they don't have to wait for a long time and then get, you know, 20 people trying to pitch ideas or whatever it is. So nice and regular, and makes the approval and commencement process a little bit shorter and a little bit easier for everybody if they're just nice and regular. Again, unit leaders can ask really great questions of the scout to try and get that challenge, the balance of the challenge nice and even. And also to help them ensure that the goals are specific, achievable and measurable. That's a really key thing. I think a lot of people will have heard of the SMART method. Look, that's just a bit of a recipe to make sure that people, you know, have something to follow and have a bit of a structure. So that's what we're asking unit leaders to really help if they themselves are comfortable with that. And that's leading to the adult leaders. We're looking for them to consider the different needs of different scouts and acting accordingly. So this is where we're looking for that support and guidance rather than maybe that, you know, direct and prescribe sort of thing. Not that any of our leaders would do that, but or with bad intentions anyway. Certainly just to make sure that it's the scouts answering their own questions rather than us providing an answer straight away. Again, coming to the questions, asking good questions that helps that scout set their goals and review their projects, and being there every step of the way to support, coach, encourage, rather than direct and prescribe. And that can be just to be on the other end of a bit of a rant. If it's not going well, maybe they just need to blow off steam and they need someone with a bit more experience to just, yep, that sounds really frustrating. Have you tried X? Or should you consider talking to whoever? So that's the kind of role that we're looking for adult leaders to play, as unit councils and unit leaders can also play. So they're just some of the roles. We'll have a little bit of a look at each of the SIAs now. So this is just a guide. This is just to get a bit of the creative juices going, a bit of inspiration, and to give you a bit of an idea of kind of what things are in each SIA. So, and then after this little section, I'll pause and we can take a breath and hopefully answer some questions if there are any. So adventure and sport. This is distinct from the technical skills of outdoor adventure skills. So we've got all the I can statements as part of outdoor adventure skills. Anything that doesn't fall into outdoor adventure skills can be popped over into adventure and sport. So the example I give here is potentially maybe a scout wants to play soccer for a season. That would be okay, but maybe they've already played soccer. So we'd ask them to develop a skill on top of that. So that might be, by the end of the season, I will be able to head the ball. So that's something that might take a little bit of, fear to overcome heading the ball. There's a little bit of skill involved in the timing and how to do it correctly so you don't hurt yourself, those kind of things. So within that broad, I'm going to play soccer for a season, there's actually a bit of skill development and maybe pushing them beyond their comfort zone. I remember certainly learning to play soccer myself. Heading the ball was something I was absolutely terrified of until I did it once after lots of coaching and just thought I was the bee's knees. So I think that's a really nice way for our youth who are already playing sport or already engaged in that to just push themselves that little bit further. All right. I'll go on to some examples. So the projects might be about moving and growing, that physical element. Taking risks responsibly is a really key one here. It might be the team sports. I love the idea that we might have someone trained up in ballooning. I think that would be brilliant. Maybe we open a, Scouts Victoria ballooning arm on the back of that. That would be fantastic. But so you'll see some of the things here that cross over into outdoor adventure skills. While the outdoor adventure skills will use the technical skills or assess the technical skills, you can do a expedition where maybe a skiing expedition if you're a rover or adventurer out to Bogle. So that could be part of this, but you're not actually killing two birds with one stone. So your SIA isn't to get skiing level 5 or whatever. That's not your SIA. That's killing two birds with one stone and not the intent of the SIAs. What you're doing is using those skills that you may have already got in a outdoor adventure skills to then achieve your your adventure and sport. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. We can come back to that a bit later. Next one is arts and literature. So this one is all about being creative and, really following that trail of breadcrumbs wherever it leads creatively for you, being really imaginative, and a huge range of areas can be explored here. So we're looking, appreciating the ones I love are producing and directing, which is something that I don't necessarily think straight away of sort of the arts and literature space. Writing can also be one. So some of the ideas might be, learning an instrument or learning to sing or putting together a short film or studying photography or poetry. I never was much of a poet being a literature student, but I certainly appreciate it. So that might be something that our young people want to sink their teeth into. But this is obviously anything to do with that sort of expression and whatever that looks like for our young people. So this is a nice, a really good one for our creative young people. So the next one is creating a better world. And this is where we start to talk about, in particular, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Better World Framework, which if you're not familiar with, don't panic, it's all good. We've got a few slides on them at the end of this presentation, and we'll talk about them a little bit further through as well. But there's some really nice linkages with that might help us get our heads around it as well. This is where the traditional sort of acting local, thinking global kind of projects and things might fall into, certainly international elements, those kind of things. But yes, we will come back to Sustainable Development Goals, so don't panic if you don't know what they are. So here we're talking about things like social justice and making a difference, networks and whether they're global or local, those kind of things, as I've said. This is where some of the charity elements might fit in. And you'll see as we go through there is a bit of crossover in the SIA. So it really depends on the project as to what SIA the young person picks. So we'll talk that through as well. So this could be, learning about experiences of refugees, humanitarian issues, cultural and religious holidays are always fascinating. That citizen science element is something that can fit in here depending on the project. So there's some really nice meaty topics that our young people can get into in this SIA, which is really exciting. Environment, and I should note that we're really lucky to have Lawrence Williams on the call tonight. He is our State Commissioner Environment. So we'll hear from Lawrence probably a little bit later on, because he's also a Joey leader extraordinaire. So he may be able to help field some of those questions. But you'll see here as well, we're looking for, to protect and enhance and learn more about our natural environment. Again, the Sustainable Development Goals come in here. And the Better World Framework, again, that we'll talk about a little bit more, has a specific environment sort of grouping, if you like, we're calling Earth Tribe. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But there's a whole, there's some elements there that can support you and your young people through this one too. And the projects, again, with that crossover, there's a little bit of citizen science. We might be experimenting, taking action, monitoring. We might be doing a bug count or something. And some of the ideas come from, clear air and water, native habitats, Clean Up Australia Day, sustainability. Climate change is something that we know from a youth survey that there's lots of the Victorian Youth Survey that's coming out. There's lots of emphasis on young people and climate change. So again, this is a really nice meaty topic for our young people to get sink their teeth into, with lots of bits and pieces that, again, can be quite broad, or you can go really specific and focus on a particular element. But yes, we will come back to the Sustainable Development Goals and Earth Tribe and things like that. So sit tight. Growth and development. This one is probably, again, it's a really meaty topic. Our young people can really investigate some really interesting things in this one. So this one's very much about your developing as a person, understanding others, maybe some of those soft skills we would refer to, and just to grow and develop and sort of broaden your knowledge or open your mind as a person. So we're looking at things like well-being, understanding, ethics, relationships, mental health and first aid can fit in here. There's obviously the volunteering and charities as well can fit in this one. So again, there's a bit of that overlap. Languages, professional skills. The ones that I really love is the emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. Something that a lot of our young people are getting exposed to now is mindfulness and gratitude through schools and things. So that might be something that they want to investigate further. So yeah, again, another really great area that we can do some pretty in-depth discovery and exploring. So really exciting area. And then our final SIA is STEM and innovation, and this is a really exciting spot. You might have seen a bit of promo over the last few weeks. We had some fantastic school holiday STEM programs run by our State Commissioner STEM and Innovation, Sarah. She did some great things over the school holiday, and we've got National Science Week coming up. So there's some things happening across the weekends and a science webinar, I think, at the end of August. I'd have to double check, but keep an eye on your emails and be informed. That will definitely point you in the right direction. But this is kind of a new space for Scouts Victoria. ACT have been doing some brilliant things for years, but this is kind of a newer area for us. And this is where our questioning, curious, scientific minds can really delve in and expand their universes. So this is very exciting. Things they might be looking at: problem solving, experimenting, inventing, innovating, those kind of things. I really love the idea that we might have, a cub or a scout that comes up with the next thing that solves a huge big problem that we've all got, or, you know, comes up with the next must-have gadget as a result of doing a SIA STEM and innovation project. So that would be fantastic. But those are the kind of things we're looking at, you know, IT, apps, everything from, you know, chemistry and geology through to website design, sociology, engineering, all those kind of things. So this is where we might get really analytical and, you know, get lots of data and find out what it's trying to tell us, those kind of things. Or we could get really into the nuts and bolts of designing some fantastic new gadget that's going to change all our lives. So I think this is, again, a really fantastic meaty topic for our young people to pull apart, as it were. And as I've said, and you'll probably notice, there's lots of crossover in these these SIAs. So it really comes down to the individual's project and goals as to where it most comfortably sits. So before we go into the frequently asked questions I've got here, I'm going to stop sharing and have a little look at the chat, see if we've got any questions. Demetrios, I'll come back to your question because we've got one of the frequently asked questions there as well. But essentially, it's a little bit of nuance. So we'll come back to it and I'll describe it then. But great question, Quinton. What do you define as success? Yep, great questions there. And that's through that review process. So we will talk about that. Lawrence has jumped in there too. Sounds pretty sound and reasonable. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So has anyone got any questions that isn't around the success failure question, which we will come to shortly? Is there anything either in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute, whatever is more comfortable for you?
As a question for you, Lisa or even Lawrence, how do you get the younger youth members to actually think up the ideas of what to do for projects when you keep hitting a brick wall and the fact they don't know what they're interested in, or they give you what they're interested in, but how to actually apply that to an SIA?
Yeah, Lawrence, do you want to jump in on this one?
I noticed this with my Joeys as well, is that they're like, some of them are bubbling with, you know, like, oh, I love playing sport or doing this or doing that, but they didn't know how to like turn it into a goal. So just sitting down and kind of like having a session where you can figure out like what's something they want to learn or progress in. Like one of my Joeys said, I'm like, what do you do on your weekends? What do you do on your weeknights? Like, what are you interested in? And he said, oh, I do karate. And I'm like, that's great. We could think about like, you know, learn a new karate routine or whatever it is that you want to progress in karate. So I found that having a little one-on-one time with your youth member to try and work out like what is progression for them in their interests kind of helps. And I know that's not going to be easy if you've got, you know, a unit of like 40 kids. But from time to time, they might come up to you and say something, or you might have to just sort of like, I don't know, talk it out of them. But I'm going to dedicate a whole day, a whole night of my term this term to special interest areas to talk to the kids about what they want. I hope that sort of answers it. That's where I'm at with it.
It sort of does. Like where I know that like I missed the first week of term, like probably only a little bit off top of it, the same thing. My other leader did a presentation, but the kids were still sort of a blank faced on like some of them know what the interests are, but it sort of stops at, oh, I do this, but that's it. And it's kind of a sort of how do you get them to like think more? Because obviously at the same time, you do programming with kids. Obviously, I'm sure you got the same thing with Joe, so I'm a club leader, and it's the same ideas every term. You're like, what other things are you interested in?
Yeah.
And you really sit there and it's like, how do you like the older ones obviously easier, but the younger ones like how do you draw out the answers and telling them it's not a stupid idea. Think of what you want to do, and we'll try and make it happen. Like it's.
And it is a bit of a
let them go
process
crazy
as well. Yeah, it's. I think my advice here would be to go with, you know, work with the kids who are really excited and you know maybe have a bit of an idea of what they'd like to do and sort of, as Lauren said, sort of drag that idea out of them a little bit more and start with them, and that might help the other kids think, oh, actually, that'd be quite cool. I'd like to do it. And you can just tweak it slightly. As I said, if you've got goals that are similar, that's okay. Just make sure that they're individual to that person. So you might just, as I said in the billy cart example, you know, they're still building a billy cart, but someone's is to, I don't know, what happens if the wheels are this much bigger than this much bigger? That might be their project. Whereas the other person, it might be, I don't know how to build one. I'm finding out for the very first time how to do it. So again, it depends on probably, you know, and maybe one of your Joeys has already started to learn piano. There might be a song that they want to end up being able to learn, and that's their SIA. Whereas someone might have never learned how to play the piano, and that might be something that they would like to start doing. So I'd also, yeah, I think that's probably the best way to think about it. But it will take a bit of time, and we're not looking for everyone to nail this the first time round. We're not looking at you guys to have all the answers first time round. It's going to be a process. Do the best you can, and then hopefully in a year's time, you'll look back on some of these early projects and think, oh, we've come so far. You know, we're getting a bit of an understanding of this now. I can see Murray on too. He sounds like he wants to say something.
I've run a brainstorming night where there's no actual goal for the end of the brainstorming, just getting to start thinking about writing down silly ideas. Like I give them a red star and say, there's a starting point. I want 100 ideas, and just lead them to it. Now, this is not necessarily going to be going to their special interest areas, but it gets them used to the idea of exploring different directions, because you'll chuck in occasional things like, oh, somebody just mentioned stars or astronomy or a space rocket or a skateboard. How do you get a skateboard out of a red star? And they go, click, 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 click. It's just a, I guess it's a training exercise in how to do brainstorming, then get them to start to think outside their own box occasionally. That works.
Yeah. And you might find that creative process is really helpful too. Like, you know, textures and stickers and, you know, pieces of butcher's paper and that kind of stuff. And, you know, you potentially can work with a patrol at a time or a small unit at a time and just pull some of those ideas out of their imagination. So, but it is a bit of a process, acknowledging that.
I've actually done it as a game where they had to run up to the end of the hall and write some of the board and come back to their patrol and have another little nut session going on there. So there's a dash or something else dashes up there. So make it fun.
Yeah.
Can I ask one other question and play devil's advocate? What is the opinion on using yellow books to give the kids ideas if they have an idea as say, like, I like photography or astronomy, and be like, look, here's an idea, but make them then think up a broader, what else can you do?
Look, we're really encouraging that, Zach, but acknowledging that and absolutely not asking our leaders to know everything about every topic that the kids are going to come up with. It might be a bit of a guide for you. So what we don't want you to do is flip to yellow book page, whatever, 50, and say, oh, these are all the things you had to do for the photography badge back in the day. What you can do is use that as a bit of a guide. So you might pick maybe 2 of those things and ask the young person, are these things you already know how to do? Is there something you'd like to know further? So use that as you and look.
So as a guide for leaders, don't hand to youth, essentially.
Pretty much, but we also don't want, like, if you can also wean yourself off that eventually as well and use your networks and things, that will be ideal. But as I said, we're not looking for perfection now. This is a change in mindset. It's a change in thinking about our program. So be gentle with yourselves. We're not going to all get it right all the time. So
Shop books are good too. I might add some odd things. Like, let's build a bridge. There's a silly book. It's about 10 pages thick, and, you know, just put it in the middle of the room, see what happens. You know, odd things.
yeah. So yeah, play with it and see how you go. As I said, we're not looking for perfection. As I said, you'll get a year down the track and think, oh, wow, we wouldn't approve that now. What we would do now is ask X, Y, and Z, or do A, B, and C, and you'd get a far better project out of it. So don't put that perfect pressure on yourself.
Yep.
Peter, sorry, you've had your hand up a million times. I've been watching you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Peter, your mic is a bit garbled and we're having trouble understanding you. Can you pop it in the chat or maybe turn it on and off again, the classic IT solution? No, unfortunately, sorry, Peter. Can you pop it in the chat for me and I promise I'll get back to it. Oh, sorry, Peter. You sound like a chipmunk. Sorry, mate. I promise we'll come back to you. I promise we'll come back to you. I'll get Lawrence to keep an eye on the chat for you as well, so he might be able to answer it for you. I'll just have a little look at our questions. Jim, plan to review. What's to stop the Scouts set up their plan, then review it, reset the plan before progressing to implementing the plan? Can I get a little more information, Jim? Is this prior to having it approved by the unit council, or what context are we talking?
I was just thinking, some people were just saying, you know, well, what's success? And, you know, my thoughts would be like in the real world, when you're doing a project at work, you're constantly reviewing, you have that dynamic sort of live feedback loop. So instead of going totally down a wrong track, or the project's not going where you want it to go, you actually pick up something's not right, you review it, change your plan, and then move on to implement the updated plan.
Yeah,
I think that would be a valid way of actually making sure that the young person actually is getting to an end point where they're actually seeing success.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And even at the end of that, then if it still doesn't come out, then they can actually identify there may be external factors that's beyond their control.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point, Jim. And look, it depends on how the unit councils or the leaders want to sort of handle those conversations and sort of how the project is pitched, I guess. But what we absolutely, you know, the young person could, and I've got an example further down the presentation as well. The Scout could come to the unit council and say, look, I've done a bit of research. I think I've bitten off a bit more than I can chew. I'm going to scope the project down a little bit, but, you know, the idea is that I will use the knowledge gained in this project to then take on, you know, another, whether it's another project as an SIA or just to complete what they set out to do later down the track. Just a reminder around the hours of effort as well. That's a really good guide if we think people are going to bite off more than they can chew, and it takes the, you know, over the 8 hours that is suggested for a Scout, then that might be an indication. But yeah, absolutely, we would be encouraging our youth members to come back to whatever council or to the leaders and say, look, this is how far I've got. I might be struggling with this. What do you think? Or, you know, I've hit a bit of a snag, but I think if I do this, I can go, you know, that direction. Absolutely valid. Definitely the way we'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that the plan do review doesn't have to be done at the very end.
Oh, no. That's just sort of the basic formula. You can do it the whole way through. Yeah. Definitely. No, good point, Jim. Thank you. Let me see. Yes, Marcus. So rough time expectations. Let me flick back.
I chucked it in the chat.
You have to, Lawrence. You're looking after me. Thank you very much. Sounds like it doesn't matter if it's not original. Sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking it needs to be different. Yes and no, Linda. So if it's a patrol idea, absolutely, there will be very close similarities, particularly if they're working on something as that patrol. But what we are looking for is just the different, the individual goals, how the individual is going to achieve that goal as part of that project. So that's the difference. And look, they can be quite similar, but we just need that slight change so that it is individualized. Hopefully that helps. Sorry, Kiralee, I've just noticed you've got your hand up. Thank you for doing that. What's your question? No, we'll come back maybe.
Sorry, yep. I've just my Wi-Fi played up just as you called on me.
Oh, of course.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my question, I just wanted to check in. So in the Cub Scout section, and I was looking at those peak awards, they were talking about, I think from memory it was 6 and in at least 2 of the areas.
Let me just flick. Oh yeah, it's in the chat. Yes.
Yeah. So if I've taken that in properly. Okay, so if a youth member decides they wanted to do a special interest area project in, say, a creative area, and that's awarded, and then they want to do another one and it's also in the creative area and that's awarded, do they wear 2 of the same identical badges on their uniform until they make that nice little put all 6 together with the points matching in, and is that how they're worn?
Yeah, they can. You can absolutely do that. So the idea is that any badge or any goal you achieve is recognised by the SIA badge, and you can wear that. Now, of course, that's there's a little bit of nuance here as well, as with lots of things in SIA. You will have seen the Venturers with the sleeves, like it's more badge than it is sleeve. That's within a bit of common sense, obviously. So yes, we're encouraging our young people to wear their achievements, wear their awards. And as you said, if you know that eventually they do the whole 6 and get the nice little, what would it be? Is it a hexagon? No. It is.
Probably. I think it's a hexagon. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes, maths. Love it. Yes. So that's what obviously we would be encouraging people to do. And this is probably a really good point to say that not all your scouts may be interested in doing SIAs, and that's totally fine. If they are engaged in your program, doing participates, assists and leads, using the spices and having a grand old time and learning stuff along the way, and they're happy, we are stoked. What we are hoping is that the ones that are excited about SIAs might inspire the other ones to give it a crack. And that doesn't have to be on the achievement pathway. They might just love STEM and just want to have a crack at a STEM project and get some recognition for it in the form of the badge. So that's totally fine too.
That was what I was sort of wondering about, the actual awarding of the physical badge, which and I've got quite a few senior Cub Scouts who are on track to complete their peak award by the end of the year, and it would make sense for me to help support them to continue and complete what they've started in the program that they've been, the previous program, or I can assist them to start doing SIAs and kind of do a hybrid with them. But I haven't gone and kind of like handed out SIA looking badges to replace, cooking level 2 or anything like that. Like, would we be looking to hand out equivalent badges and changing over what they're wearing on the uniform?
Murray has his hand up, so I'm going to let him talk to this. It sounds like he has something of use to say.
Awesome.
Yeah, there are 2 different forms for the Pinnacle Award for Cub Scouts on the website. One for basically people finishing in the original program, and one for the guys who have transitioned to complete to the new program. The badges and crossing over the badges is always going to be interesting, and it really comes down, I think, to you making the decision as to what's appropriate for the Cubs to actually wear. If they're finishing in the original program and they've done the badges work in that program, give them those badges. If you don't have any of those, give them the appropriate matching one you can from the SIA or the OAS chain to finish them off, or even the level 1, 2, 3, not the boomerangs anymore, what the heck they call it, brains gone dead.
Milestones instead of boomerangs.
So some of that, because the badges are starting to run out for the old program as well, it's going to be make it look neat, I guess, on their sleeve. Some badge competition.
I've heard that the gold boomerang's pretty hard to come by now, and that I would imagine particularly a couple of my kids who would be close to earning that, if I said they'd earned the gold boomerang, they'd hope to receive a physical gold boomerang. But it would also be okay to
milestone 3.
Whatever works and what we can get available to award them. And it sounds like there's a more flexible approach to, we're not going to have leaders policing leaders about did you do it right, did you award it right. We're all working through this together to get get through to make sure the youth is the focus, without stressing ourselves out and tying ourselves in knots about it.
Just make sure you do go to the Cub web pages and get the appropriate Pinnacle Award form, because they have been updated recently, and don't use anything you've got stored away anywhere.
Sure, yes. Thank you.
And this is a little bit of a messy crossover time too, Kiralee. So look, reach out for help. I know, look, Murray is a font of all knowledge, so don't hesitate to reach out to him. I've popped the SIA email address in as well, so feel free to flick that anywhere and I can divert that to the most appropriate person.
But also, go to your district Cub Scout leaders
Exactly.
and your Cub commissioners for your region and so on. I'm just coming from what we talked about at State Cub Council. So, yeah.
Just reach out and you've hit the nail on the head. We shouldn't be tying ourselves up in knots as leaders. We're just learning and getting through as best we can. And hopefully we're helping each other and encouraging each other through and finding the best way to put our youth members forward. That's the best thing.
Thanks very much. That's really great.
Good. I'm glad. I'll go to Bertrand now. You've had your hand up for a little while.
I run a new group, and there are the Joey sections and the Cub section for us. I don't think they will be running the old system, so it's all completely new for us. What is the minimum requirement for the Joeys or the Cubs to go for their peak award? If how many of the SIA badges do they need to get, or do they need to get all 6 with the minimum hours?
No. So there's they need to do 2 areas for the minimum, and it's at least 2 hours each for the Joeys. So that's just for the SIAs in the achievement pathway. So if they're going for that peak award, they just need to get 2 of the SIAs, 2 hours each project.
6 projects total though.
Sorry, yes. Sorry. Good clarification, Lawrence. Thank you.
This question's answered on the FAQs as well, under what are the SIA requirements for a peak award.
Sorry, Lawrence, when you say 6 projects, that means that they have to get all 6 badges?
They don't have to get every area. They can do 6 projects spread across at least 2 areas. So you could do 3 arts and literature, 3 STEM and innovation, for example.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
If they do more areas, that's just a win, but it is just the 6 projects.
Yeah, correct. No, thank you for jumping in there, Lawrence. I was so focused on the 2 and anyway, thank you for the clarification. Right, I'm just going to jump back to the chat, and then once I've got these questions in the chat, we'll jump to the frequently asked questions in the presentation, just so we cover that off. Yes, so in addition to the recording of the webinar, Rachel, we will also put up the slide deck as well, so you'll have reference to that. Also for our Joey leaders, we're actually developing a specific Joey webinar that's still being pulled together, so it'll still be a little while before we can put that out, but just keep an eye on Be Informed and the usual places you find out about all the shenanigans going on. So, but yes, that is coming. We're working with the Joey Scout Council to give you a little bit more support, because we understand it can be a bit of a hard thing for our younger ones to get their heads around.
I'll just put in something there, Lisa. In the Cub section, you have a chat with Michael Wong or Louise Sidor, who are the program support specialists. They have all the answers as well.
Yeah, they're really great resources. And again, it comes out to just reaching out to those people that are still around. So even the program champions you might be familiar with, as I said, certainly send us an email, reach out to your district section leaders, those kind of things, and they'll be able to support you as well. Plan A doesn't work. There's another 26 letters to work through. Absolutely. Mentors or adults will help if they're involved in the area. So reach out, use your networks. Different badges. I know there's a lot of badge swapping going on. If certain groups have requirements, they might be able to swap with another group not too far away. So that is happening, and that's totally okay. Do what you need to do so that you don't end up with 100 old badges that you can't do anything with. So definitely reach out to each other. Cool. Until the end of this year, don't do this for the peak award. It can be good link, Carla. That's something that we've been talking to the Joeys about. But if you do want to have a crack at the Joey Scout Council, I should say, rather than actual small humans, we have been talking to the Joey Scout Council about that as well. So use the resources on the website. There's lots of things under sections. There's lots of stuff under the SIAs. And yes, we are absolutely here to help you out. So please don't hesitate. All right, I'm going to jump back into the presentation. If you do have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. and hopefully either Lawrence or Murray or someone will be able to answer them for you. But we're also going to go through a few now. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more to go on. Let me do this. Oh, pardon me. All right, so some frequently asked questions. And these are some of the ones I think we were sort of dancing around before. Can you count one project towards more than one SIA challenge if you have enough hours for both? So what I'd like to remind you here that it's quality, not quantity with the SIAs. We're not looking to achieve all the badges in the book. We're looking to pursue projects that we're really interested in and we're going to get a lot out of. We're looking for the effort invested, so that talking to those hours. So, you know, like we're looking for, if it's a little bit under the 8 hours, that's okay, depending on the effort involved. If it's a little bit over, that's also okay. What we're looking for is that significantly under or that significantly over, and that might give us an indication as to, you know, that maybe the challenge was a little bit too hard or a little bit not hard enough. It definitely comes back to the intent of the goal and the project. So that's something to really keep in mind. This is obviously has to be quite generalized advice because there will be all sorts of weird and wonderful ways our young people can take SIAs, and that's a good thing. That's an absolutely brilliant thing. But we do just need to keep some sort of basic principles in the back of our minds. I quite like this sentence. I can't remember where I stole it from, but this is about, SIA is about creating experiences rather than trying to get 2 projects across one subject matter. So changing that mindset from, you know, if I get all these badges, I go, you know, I get the award. It's more about how many opportunities can I create for myself to learn something new or, you know, develop a skill or whatever it is. So what it kind of comes down to is there cannot be one project sharing the same goals across 2 SIAs. They must be distinct from each other. So again, if you're thinking about it as creating great opportunities, you want as many opportunities as you can possibly, you know, handle versus, you know, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's one of the things there. The next one is, can you change project goals partway through a project? Now, this is what we touched on a little bit. If it's due to a change or increase in knowledge or a slightly different tact that, you know, you're definitely diverting from the original goal that you were planning on doing, then I would encourage you to, you know, maybe draw a line in the sand and just still do the review process, but then maybe, you know, start a new project with the knowledge that you've acquired through that process. So probably needs to be a reasonably compelling reason to change. But I'll give you an example, or a couple of examples, which might help paint the picture a little bit. So there was a story at the program conference. Some of you may, last year, some of you may have gone along. In the SIA component, there was a story of I think it was a rover who had decided that she was going to grow her own tomatoes and use the tomatoes that she cultivated to make a pasta sauce. Now, long story short, the tomatoes failed to grow. The crop didn't make it. So she, that wasn't necessarily deemed as a failure because she'd learnt so much about how to care for tomatoes that the next time round she wanted to try, she was more confident that she could maybe get to the end of the tomato growing process and hopefully get the pasta sauce made. I'm actually going to follow up because I had lots of questions about whether she made it or not. So I'll find out and put it on the frequently asked questions for you. But that's kind of the idea around that failure or change in tact. So she obviously didn't quite make it. There's obviously a few hours in you know, setting up a veggie bed and making sure that it's going to give the plants all the nutrients and things that they need to grow. Particularly, you know, fruit can be a bit difficult sometimes depending on the conditions. So there's a lot of effort involved. So I believe the idea was that she was still awarded that awarded the badge in recognition of the effort involved despite the tomatoes failing. So that's something to keep in mind. The other example we have is around podcasts. So a scout started wanting to create 6 podcasts and realized there was lots of time and effort that went into just making the one podcast. So the hour sort of limits or the hour suggestions and the effort involved in creating that one podcast was recognized for that project. And then that scout went on to do the other 5 as part of the challenge, you know, how that sequencing goes, if there was editing that went across them, those kind of things. So using the knowledge that they created trying to do the whole 6 was sectioned off, so recognized as one project, one award, and then he used the other 5 as a different project. So that goes back to Jim's point around constantly bringing back that review process and analysing and keeping in touch with your unit council, your leaders, to make sure that you're tracking in the right way, or if you do need help, or if there's issues or whatever it is. So that feedback loop is quite important. The next one. How do we know if the project is challenging enough for ourselves or someone in our unit? Great question. This one actually came from one of our youth councils. So this is a genuine question from one of our youth members. It's really important to take into account the existing level of knowledge and trying to understand why and what they're interested in learning about through this project. So getting a bit of an understanding of what why are they going down this path in the first place? What is it that they're interested in learning? Is it, a particular mechanism that a machine uses or something that they're really keen to know why it works and how it works? An indication can also be, will they need a subject matter expert to help them? That might be, just an adult with a little bit more life experience, or it might be someone with a really specialized skill. So, talking about maybe learning to play a guitar, you would need someone who obviously knew how to play a guitar. So those kind of things. What skills might they need to develop and achieve those goals? So that's something that we're asking our young people to consider when they're putting their projects together, is what things they think they might need to learn how to do in order to achieve this project. So, if it's engineer a 35-story building, then that might be a significant challenge and might make them, we might have to scale that down depending on their level of knowledge. And patrol leaders and peers generally have a pretty good idea of an appropriate challenge level, particularly when you get to sort of the scout, venturer, rover age. Even cubs will have a bit of an understanding, that older age group. And just by asking questions and sort of understanding what their interest level, where their knowledge level is already at, what their interests already are currently, those kind of things. So using a combination of these things and how they sort of interlink with each other is a good way to get an indication of that challenge sweet spot. Where can we get help? So we've talked about this a little bit as well, and we've talked about subject matter experts. Essentially, a subject matter expert can be anyone. It can be a fellow scout in the section above, below, leaders with an expertise in this area of interest. You might have, you might be the cub leader, but one of your cubs is interested in something that the venturer leader does as a profession. So that might be an opportunity to link those two people up and get that venturer leader to provide some support to the cub leader, the cub, for example. It might be a parent in your group that you know through their involvement in the group that they've got a particular knowledge that one of your scouts can maybe pick their brain. Member of the community, so it might be a local politician might be able to provide support depending on the project that a young person wants to provide. So it's about using our networks. And as we've already touched on a little bit as well, teachers, tutors, coaches, those kind of things. We talked about learning guitar. You might need someone who knows how to play a guitar to be able to teach you. Coaches, the example of heading the ball, you'll need someone who actually knows what they're doing and knows how to teach doing those sort of things. So that's a really important thing to acknowledge there. And pretty much anyone else you can think of. We're really encouraging people to use their networks, and being a subject matter expert doesn't have to be a really involved process. Like, it doesn't have to be, meetings once a week or anything. It can be an email or a phone call or an initial meeting to sort of set the tone, and then a catch up later on or something like that. So, and this is, of course, depending on the project and the goals that the young person is trying to achieve. In addition, and please don't tell marketing about this because they will get very upset that this is just a PowerPoint Word document thing, but this is how our little world works at the moment. So we've got our program, Sustainable Development Goals and the Better World Framework, which we'll come back to, sort of floating up there in the top, all parallel to each other. but also interlinked. And then we've got the special interest areas, of which you can see all the coloured boxes are our special interest areas. And then we have this level, this second from the bottom level, is actually our state commissioners in the PET. So we've got a State Commissioner of Performing Arts, International Heritage, Environment and STEM. And so they potentially can offer some support if your networks aren't turning up anything for you. And then they also have the teams within their structures. So obviously we've got Game Show and the show times. We've got the Scout Band, we've got Stage, which is more the technical sort of side, radio electronics, air activities, 4-wheel drive, water skiing, sailing and power boating. So the ones under adventure and sport are the ones not recognised under OAS. They kind of sit more with us, but they're still an adventurous activity. So there's a little bit of interlinking there as well. But so we also have our own networks and our own people that we may be able to call on. But what I'm asking you first is to really exhaust your own network, because the last thing all the state commissioners need is 20,000 requests for help because their young people haven't got someone to help mentor them. So absolutely the offer is there, and obviously we have our own networks, but please try and keep it as local as you can, because obviously that's better for our youth members as well. They don't want to be talking to someone that they've potentially never met before, never clapped eyes on before. It'll certainly make it a much nicer experience if there's a little bit of familiarity there, if at all possible. Moving along, where can we get ideas for SIA projects? And essentially the answer is anywhere you like. A lot of it, particularly for our younger people, as we've already discussed, may come from existing interests that they might want to develop. So Lawrence used the example of, I do Taekwondo. Is there a move, like a more challenging move that you want to learn? Maybe that's a good basis for an SIA challenge. Could come from school or work or other hobbies. The brainstorming idea that Murray brought up, and Lawrence also said he's going to devote maybe a night to getting some of those creative juices going. Patrol activities, program camps, events. If there's something that you do as a unit and one particular scout takes an absolute liking to it, you could suggest that maybe they pursue something along those lines as an SIA. And that events as well, kangaroo, cubbaree, the kids will be doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things there. It will be rich for SIA ideas, and that's often something that can be really helpful there too. The guide to SIAs, which is linked in both the PR.Scouts link and the ScoutsVic resources page, that's got a whole bunch of suggestions and things there to sort of get the brain ticking over and use those suggestions in the back of that guide. Something I've been saying to some of our older scouts is, what's something you've always wanted to do or learn or work on, or use it as a bit of an excuse to do something that you haven't had the opportunity to do before. And really follow it down the rabbit hole and see where you get to. The other thing that we're hoping to develop too is a bit of a wiki on some of the ideas that start coming through when we start hearing that people have been working on. Not necessarily how to do them per se, because obviously that defeats the purpose of it being a personalised goal and a personalised project. But just, again, a bit of inspiration and a bit of a flavour of what other people are working on. And then that may also create other subject matter experts. It will be brilliant, and I would love it if we had a scout, I don't know, in Nuttawading who did some amazing project, who is then able to support maybe a scout in Mildura or Geelong because they had a similar project. They can support each other. That would be fantastic. I think that would be brilliant. So we hope to have that wiki up soon. Keep an idea, wiki, like, sort of storage, or whether it's just a list or something, where we're still putting that together, but keep an eye on Be Informed, and hopefully that will come through shortly. Okay, this is another really important one, and this has come up a couple of times. Can an SIA activity also contribute, I know the sentence is a bit wonky, also contribute towards milestones, participates, assists or leads? So there's a little bit of nuance here, as I've said a lot tonight. It is possible, but it's not the intent of an SIA. So as we've sort of touched on already, SIAs are not designed to be a whole of unit activity. For the younger sections, particularly initially, absolutely go nuts, particularly in patrols, definitely. The program is created by youth members using the challenge areas. So that's the distinction there. SIAs are very much about personal development and goal setting, whereas the participates, assists and leads and milestones and things like that, that's more program based. So to develop that, those leadership skills, get the diverse program happening, using those challenge areas, that's where if kids don't want to do SIAs, fine, happy, no problem, as long as they are engaged in that diverse program through the challenge areas, through the participates, assists and leads. And if they're wanting to pursue those milestones, boom, baby, we're doing well. So that's the distinction there. I hope that kind of makes a little bit more sense for people. The example I'll give there, let me just flick across in my notes. So an example here is that we might have had maybe an older cub or a scout wanting to grow trees for a period of time and then plant them. And that's part of maybe their environment SIA project. And part of the project is also to plant those trees, and he'll need the scout may need their unit's help to plant them. So that might be an opportunity for a lead, but it's not the intent of the SIA. The SIA is to grow the trees and plant the trees. So hopefully that helps people get their heads around that. Okay, so I've just got a couple of the resources there. The resources that I'm pointing to here, they are also on the scouts.pr, pr.scouts website, which we've popped in the chat a couple of times. There's a couple of little terrain resources there, a fact sheet for to get your head around it sort of quickly and get some inspiration quickly. The guide to the SIA, pretty much all this information that you've seen in the presentation tonight, team, has come from these various resources. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not saying anything out of turn. I've just condensed it down for you so you don't have to flick through everything in a mad panic. You've got a bit of an idea of where you can find stuff reasonably quickly, hopefully. And the why SIA document you'll see comes from pr.scouts as well. It's just a bit of background info. Sometimes I find it helps if people understand why we're doing SIAs, that it might help them sort of get their heads around, the purpose of them and the intent of them and those kind of things. So if you're a thinker like that, please have a little read of the why SIAs. What I'm going to do really quickly now is just go through those sustainable development goals. So I'll just flick across. Again, some of you may be familiar with these. Some of you may be familiar with these outside of a scouting context, because this is a worldwide United Nations campaign. There's 17 of them. They replaced the Millennium Goals, for those of you who may remember those. And it's all about reducing inequality and promoting peace and justice and generally making the world a better place, which is kind of a Scouts our MO. So that's what we should be doing. So this came from the UN, and the UN said, hey, WASM, our world organization, you're doing such great things with heaps and heaps of young people across the world. Can you help us out with the Sustainable Development Goals? And so WASM said, yep, that sounds like something we can do. We'd love to be involved. And so they took the development goals and they scoutified them into the Better World Framework. So the Better World Framework is just Scout speak for how Scouts might tackle the sustainable development goals. And the Better World Framework, you'll see there in the middle, those middle two there, Messengers of Peace and Scouts of the World, they've been around for ages. We're well comfortable with those ones. There's a couple more to add to our bow now, which is fantastic. And they're really diverse, really chunky topics for us to sink our teeth into, and really exciting. So Earth Tribe has replaced the World Environment Badge. And that's got the 3 badges as part of the Earth Tribe section, which I'll actually get Lawrence to do a little summary of that. He doesn't know this, but hopefully that's okay. And then there's other ones like the Patromonito badge, which is the bottom left. That one has also been around for a little while, but not heavily utilised in Australia. It's a bit difficult for us to do that one, but it's good to know that it's there. He for She is the gender equality campaign out of the UN. And the Dialogue for Peace is another newish component of the Better World Framework. this is just a different way of representing it. And as I said, so where you can see the circles with all the colours, that's the parts of the Better World framework that can respond to all of the Sustainable Development Goals, depending on which way you want to take it. So this is just a way of lining up the Better World framework with the Sustainable Development Goals. So you'll see the Scouts Go Solar is only responding to sort of 3 of the development goals, whereas, you know, Messages of Peace, it could be all of them. Patra Monito is only the 3. So it really depends on which way you want to go or which way your youth members are looking at, that you might be able to use these as a way for them to get their heads around an SIA challenge. This one is just another way to represent that. So we've got the 17 Sustainable Development Goals across the top. And then the ticks are obviously where they correspond with our Better World framework stuff. This image is a little old, I have to say. We've got this World Environment badge still sticking there, but you get the intent. It's just a different way of representing it for you. So there's a few handy resources here as well. You can just type into Google WASM Sustainable Development Goals and this stuff should pop up for you. There's the generalized Scout Sustainable or SDGs website from WASM. There's a little bit of e-learning. I think it's about half an hour, 40 minutes. If you're interested in wanting to get your head around it, it's pretty good learning, just to help you get your you know, the cogs in your head turning around these things. There's the WASM Better World Framework website, which has some really great info as well. And then Earth Tribe, which has its own website because it's 3 parts of Better World Framework rather than just the one. And with that, I might actually just throw to Lawrence, if that's okay.
For sure. So Earth Tribe's a really exciting part of the program because it's a place where youth can get involved in making better environmental change. And I know I've met a lot of youth members who are really excited about that and they want to get involved in, you know, doing something for our climate or for our local environment. So there's 3 badges. You've got the names escape me now. You've got the Scouts Go Solar badge, which has been around for a little while, but that's basically around learning about renewable energy, all its different forms. And there's a whole bunch of activities involved in that. So you can really just pick up that book and run with it. There is the Tide Turners Plastic Challenge, which is all about addressing plastic waste and plastic in our waterways as well. And there we go, Champions for Nature, thanks Lisa, is the one that was on the tip of my tongue. And that one's more about our biodiversity and how we can preserve our natural areas. So there's 3 different badges that youth can get in there, and there's action kits on the Scouts Vic website. If you search for Earth Tribe on the Scouts Vic website, you'll find them. And within those action kits, it tells you basically what they need to achieve. Now, the guide for us is that we can use these as sort of a special interest area badge, maybe for a patrol of kids. And the extension that you can provide to sort of individualize them into their own project is that they have to really assess their own actions as a part of these badges. So, you know, what are my energy needs? How much impact do I have with the plastic products that I buy, that kind of thing. So they really learn a lot about their own use and then what they can do to sort of improve things. And that's basically those 3 badges, and they're pretty fun, and there's different challenge at different levels. So there's something for everyone, Joeys to Rovers.
Yeah, and they're really exciting, fun badges. They're a slightly different take on what you might have done as the World Environment badge, or for those old enough to remember the old Panda badge, I think it was WWF, which always makes me think of the wrestling when I say that. So, but the Panda, for those of you old enough. So these are obviously a little bit more specific and probably a little bit more of a take on some of the more modern challenges we have, certainly around the plastics and things that we use these days. So, thank you. Lawrence, he's just put some those resources he was talking about in the chat if you'd like to have a bit of a look further. So thank you, Demetrios. Yep, WWF. There's a panda, but it's also a wrestling thing, I think. Anyway, so the Scouts work on Better World badges, and that will allow them to cover off elements of the SDGs. Yes. So the Better World framework, as I said, is just sort of WASM making sense of the SDGs. you don't have to use Better World Framework. If your youth members are really keen on addressing SDG 8, which I can't remember what that is off the top of my head, but they absolutely can do a project just on SDG 8. There's no, you certainly don't have to do the Better World Framework. It's just if you'd like to use them to get your head around some of these really meaty topics. I think
a quick example maybe. As a part of applying for a grant at my Scout group with our local council to get solar panels, we actually had to incorporate some education around solar energy and how it all works and what the benefits are for us. So that was a really direct way for us to address the renewable energy sustainable development goal. And it gave the venturers in particular an opportunity to learn and then teach it to our younger youth members. So we were able to incorporate a lot of different people into that.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. You certainly don't have to use Better World Framework. You can absolutely address, 1 or 2 or 3 of the individual, or however many you like, of the individual SDGs. But we'd certainly encourage you to, pop them on the Messages of Peace website if you're interested in that. That's something that, as you saw, is a bit of a catch-all. Yes, Carla, Scouts in Action Month is SDG 2s. There's some really great resources. Thank you. That is a great pickup. Definitely have a look at those and the website that Lawrence has also put up. There's a bunch of stuff you can, as I said, you can type Scouts SDGs or Scouts Better World Framework into Google, and there'll be some stuff from other countries. It's really again a little bit choose your own adventure. And as I said, it's something you can use for SIAs. They can do them just because they want to do them. It's just another offering, but they're certainly not compulsory. It's not another thing that you have to add to your list of things to get your head around. It's just purely there if you want to use it as a tool.
Good resource to develop a project, but yeah,
exactly.
Not compulsory.
Exactly. So is there any, got one, very good. Do the Better World badges have their own requirements listed on their websites? Yes, so Lawrence mentioned that there are a number of requirements. I don't know if that's the right word.
There's an action kit for each of the Earth Tribe badges, and I've linked them in on the environment section of Scouts Fix website, so you should be able to access them through there. As for the other badges, I'm not 100% sure, but you might be able to find more info online on the WASM website.
Yeah, WASM and even Scouts Australia has a little bit of a blog post which explains them too. So what I might do is pop that up in the frequently asked questions as well, just some resources for the SDGs as well. Some of the PET members have got some stuff up in their various sections too. So international covers it. Obviously environment covers it, and STEM overlaps a little bit as well. So there are some things on the Scouts Vic website too. Yeah, look, they can be really overwhelming. I think it's probably best if you can introduce them maybe via the Better World Framework stuff as a bit of an introduction. And then you can talk about where the Better World Framework came from. Or you can do it the other way around. And I know groups that have picked one of the SDGs as a bit of a theme, so that they investigate, the impact of said SDG throughout the world, what's currently being done to address it. And they've they're not working their way through all of them. It's what the youth members have identified as something that they're interested in, for example. But that's also a really good way to build a bit of profile. But yeah, they can be kind of scary topics and things. And that's where some of the resources available through the UN Sustainable Development Goals website and stuff can be really helpful, because they are kind of pitched at a younger generation. So look, there is a bunch of resources online. I'd encourage you to have a look at what's already there. You certainly don't need to reinvent the wheel, and reach out to our state commissioners as well. They've got their heads around some of these things. Obviously Lawrence more the environment side, and Sarah will take some of those innovation kind of things, and Leah might be able to talk to some of the broader topics as well. But I think it's also about pacing it at the youth members level too. So you obviously wouldn't necessarily really go too hard on some of the scarier topics with maybe some of our younger people. It might be maybe an ethics conversation with ventures and things that you could use them for. Yeah, I think that's probably, it's a little bit, you'll have to gauge it on the group of scouts you're working with, I think.
They work really well as...
You'll know your kids better. Sorry, Lawrence.
No, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. They work really well as themes for terms. So an example, SDG 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. So for example, you know, you could take your cub pack to go and visit the local council, local police station, and figure out sort of what are the mechanisms within our communities for when something goes wrong, or how do we sort out disputes amongst people, because you know you can kind of equate that to like how a unit council might run, or how you might have a code of conduct for your cubs too. It's sort of reflected in your broader society as well. So it's a really good way to kind of frame how the kids think in terms of doing it as a term program. One by one might be the way to introduce it.
Yeah, I think that's probably, and you know, maybe starting with some of the, I won't say lighter topics, but some of the ones that might be a bit easier to have a
chose a heavy one.
Sorry, Lawrence.
I chose a heavy one for my example. Yeah,
exactly. So those are the links from the presentation I've just dropped in the chat there for everyone. But as I said, I think I'll pop them up as part of the frequently asked questions as well, so you've got that to refer back to. So give me a few days and I'll attempt to put those on the website for you as well. So but look, as I said, they're a good way to sort of introduce some concepts. They're a good way to have a sort of overarching theme. It can be something that maybe you work with other community groups through council links and things to work on a particular thing. You might want to fundraise under a particular SDG. Some of you youth members might want to use it as a project. They're pretty flexible in how we're using them. It's really just if you do want some tools to help you break down some you know, curly topics, then this might be the way to do it. Bertrand.
Lisa, I assume that I'm jumping the gun a bit, but I'm getting some ideas from you, which might be quite good for our cubs, because they're quite bored with the programs that we're doing at the moment.
Okay.
Just trying to challenge them.
Yep.
Was wondering, when is your next seminar or webinar? I will get the cub leader to actually attend so that he can get some ideas too, and get the auntie off my backs.
So I don't have another live webinar planned, but if there's enough demand, we can do one. But we will put a recording, probably this one, because we've covered some really good topics, up on the website that you'll be able to find. So if you go to that SIA resource page on Scouts Victoria, it will be loaded up there.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
No problem. No problem. Does anyone else have any questions? Either about the SIAs or about the SDGs. Lawrence is a really great resource for the SDGs, particularly the Earth Tribe stuff. Yes, Demetrios, thank you. I'd heard about this, but I haven't actually explored it too much. So there's an SDG Academy. Are you able to talk a bit to it, Demetrios? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Is that okay?
It's better. Give me a second. Yes, the Academy, thank you for that. It's not something new, but is now advertised through the Scouts website, not ours, the World Scouts. And it's an open platform, like a learning. It's not like a 30-minute something to do. It's a lot more, needs commitment, but actually provides explanation and a lot more than just a 30 minutes something, and it's specific for each one of the goals.
Yeah. No, I've heard really good things about it. So if this is something that's you know, really sparked your interest, absolutely. I've heard very good things about the Academy. So thank you for adding that. That's a great resource. Laurel, you can get in touch with Lawrence. Probably the easiest way is just
I'm putting my email in the chat.
scenvironment@scoutsvictoria.com.au. See how good he is? He's just reads my mind. So good. All right, team. Well, we've done a good session. Thank you for joining me for such a long time. Zach, you've got your hand up.
I'll put this in chat, but I was just going to mention, if anyone needs old badges, feel free to get in touch with me, because I do actually have a badge count list and have a fair few.
Awesome.
In particular. So I'll put my email address in the chat for anyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. Don't hesitate to reach out to each other. Use each other's networks and know-how and all that sort of stuff. So, all right, team. Well, I'll leave it there if there's no further questions. As I said, this session's been recorded. We'll pop it up on the website at the end of the month. If there is enough demand, I can absolutely run another session if that's what happens. But we will put the recording up. I'll put the slide deck up. We'll put a few more frequently asked questions up. So hopefully that will have you all covered. The main takeaway tonight is you don't have to know everything. It doesn't have to be perfect. Be gentle with yourself, and just think, how does this benefit the youth? That's what it comes down to. How does this create as many opportunities and positive experience for our youth members, for them just to, take ideas and run with them. Don't get too hung up on doing it right perfectly every time. As I said, you might look back in a year, 18 months time and think, yeah, we probably wouldn't approve that now, but we'd ask some really great questions to get a really great outcome. And it's about working with your youth members and working with each other. So please don't think you have to have all the answers. Please don't think it has to be perfect. We're going from a very prescribed program to something that's a little bit more fluid, shall we say. So, be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself, and just do your best. That's all we can ask for. So thank you very much for taking the time to spend quite a long time with me tonight, but I appreciate you all coming and helping us out. And a huge thanks to Lawrence for jumping in, and also Murray for fielding some questions as well. Really appreciate everyone's time and everyone's shared knowledge. So thank you very much, team. Much appreciated.